And we're live. Hello, I'm Mario Serafero, editor-in-chief at xda-developers.com, flashaholic in recovery, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the first XDA Android podcast. Our goal is to cover Android tech news from an enthusiast perspective. I'm joined today by other Redditors and XDA editors.
Hi, I'm Anthony. I am an AMA coordinator on the Android subreddit.
Hi, I'm Brett, aka SuperEdge, organizer of free and open software conferences.
Hi, I'm Corey. I'm an Android developer.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm an Android enthusiast. You can find me at the handle Ultimax98.
And hi, I'm Matthew. I'm writer for XDA and the voice behind our social media.
Alright, so let's get to it. Our first topic for the day is the new Nexus, Nexus 5, Nexus 6, Nexus 5X, Nexus 6P. That's quite a questionable name, but we'll get to that in a second. One is supposed to be LG's Nexus 5 successor by LG, and the other one's Nexus Phablet by Huawei. So there's been many leaks about this, but first of all, I want to hear what you guys think about the design. The designs are very polarizing because they're too different and they're too not Android-like in some instances.
I'm not necessarily sure that the devices are that bad in design. I think the mint color that was announced was a bit weird. It looked a bit like old white paint.
Yeah, I think it was just a really bad white balance. I think it's actually white, like similar to the Nexus 5.
Yeah.
We've heard rumors of a mint Nexus 5X or whatever that is for quite some time now. So even if that picture might not have been of the mint one, it's been a rumor for quite some time that was coming in that color.
I certainly saw several websites declare that they'd heard it from sources that should know.
Yeah. I don't think Google is afraid of experimenting with different colors, honestly. I mean, we've seen the bright red Nexus 5, which was quite a hit, was quite a success. And we also saw that bluish tint Nexus 6. I don't think they would be afraid of trying new colors. But going back to the design, you look at the Nexus 5 and you see this, a new Nexus 5 is rounder and kind of looks like Lumia in some instances. They definitely changed some of the aspects that made the Nexus 5 what it is. I'm a Nexus 5 owner. I love the design of this phone. The Nexus 5 still looks sleek today. So I know that some of you are Nexus owners. What do you think about the new designs as a Nexus owner?
Well, I have a Nexus 6. I never owned a Nexus 5, so I'm not going to talk about that specifically. The Nexus 6, I think this one has a much better design, personally. I'm not a fan of that. They were referring it to like a periscope is what it looked like, with that huge camera hump in the back or something. Like, I feel like there's something else embedded in there, like an IR blaster or something. I don't know, but it just a hump for nothing. I don't know. It just seems.
Do they really need all that space for an IR blaster?
I don't think so, but it's got to be something else in there.
I just hope maybe it's a good camera module. We've seen the thickness of camera modules going up and up recently. The iPhone has the little bump. All the new Samsung phones also have a bump. So maybe it's not really that big of a bump. It's just the way they curved the outside of it to kind of blend it in and make it look like that periscope. I'm not that concerned about the bump in general, and the same thing with the Huawei one. I'm not that concerned about that little bump on the top either. I think they're both nice-looking devices. I prefer Motorola's design. I have a Nexus 6. I like that nice design that Motorola's using, but I think they're fairly nice devices, though.
Yeah, you touched on the camera, and I think we can move into the specifications. Now, you mentioned you hope it has a good sensor. There's always complaints about Nexus cameras, but to be honest, I mean, you look at the Nexus 6, it has a pretty good sensor. It's really down to the software. Now, there's rumors about Google Camera Free. There's been some leaks as well. So hopefully that will improve the stock Android camera experience. But going back to the specifications, how do you guys feel about the processors listed as Snapdragon 808, the rumored extend for the Huawei, and the RAM configurations? Because we also hear that the Nexus 5X might only have 2 GB of RAM.
I really don't I really hope they don't have an 810. I mean, surely by now we've learned don't put an 810 in your phone if you don't want to melt your face. And
Though I
I
will
think-
mention we do have winter coming up pretty soon, so that might have to play into things.
Yeah,
I think-
I'm in Minnesota, and Corey's in Minnesota too, so.
I think my response to that, though, I guess playing devil's advocate, is what else are they going to put in it? Samsung's not going to give them an Exynos, and I'm sure Google wouldn't want to use it anyway. And they're going to go with Huawei's Kirin SoC? Like, I don't know. I don't think there's any other options. The 820 doesn't come out till next year, so.
That was the original rumor, actually, that they would go to Huawei for a Nexus, not just because it's that Chinese OEM, but because of the Kirin, SoC, or because they needed another SoC. Now going with the 810, I mean, I've written a lot about the 810. I'm holding an 810 device right now. I'm actually hotspotting, and this is quite warm right now. So I'm really not looking forward to an 810 and a Nexus phablet. That being said, I will probably get the Nexus 5 just because I want to return to a smaller screen size. Every phone in my house right now is 5.5 inches or larger screen size.
To touch on 810 as well too, sorry, like it's not something you can quickly change about. Like if you've committed to an 810 or you've said, okay, I want the greatest and latest Qualcomm chip 1 or 2 years ago as you start your design and development kind of thing, it's really tricky, if not impossible, to change that within the last 6 months to 9 months before releasing your product. So if you're putting in, if the Nexus 6 is coming out with an 808, it was probably intentional they were doing that right at the start. Otherwise, well, probably most phones are going to have to be 810 for the near future because, like mentioned before, 810, 820 is going to be a next year kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brett. I think that it's been long in the making. I think the LG, with the 808, I think it's actually going to be a really good performing device. You've got the 808. Even if it's 2 gigs of RAM, stock or Google Android doesn't really need, 3 or 4 gigs of RAM like a Samsung device does. And it's also going to be only running a 1080p screen. So, I think that it's going to be a well-balanced performing machine. It might not be the thing that everybody wants, but for $350 to $400, I think it's going to be a hard thing to beat. Especially, it seems to be tuning that software to not just be over-speccing everything like they've done in the past. The one thing I wanted to say about the Kirin processor, though, with the Huawei is there's also the possibility that it might not have been compatible with as many LTE bands as the Qualcomm chips are. And with Google pushing Google Fi, they probably need to make sure that it's going to run on CDMA and GSM networks without any problems, and be kind of a world phone almost. So that could also be a situation they considered before picking the 810 for that phone.
Yeah,
I would love to see a Kirin processor in a Nexus just for the comments.
Oh.
So many people would be pissed off with that.
Well, it was the
brilliant.
same. I mean, it's the same thing. I have a friend who got the S6, and he didn't like the fact that it had an Exynos processor because, in terms of like rooting and ROMing and everything, it just wasn't. It wasn't really suitable for that. So
AOSP support's very low.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to make like an open device where you can do rooting and ROMing and like really customize and make it your own, you have to go with a Qualcomm processor right now, for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty depressing. The S6 does not really have any options that are not really TouchWiz, and people don't like TouchWiz. I mean, some other phones, the Note 4 and the S5 and other phones, they have the Snapdragon variant, and those have a plethora of different CyanogenMod options. Stock Android, really. Obviously, you lose the camera excellence of Samsung devices, but that alternative, it really does drive the sales and the enthusiast side of the community, at least. It's so common to see people with Note 4s running CyanogenMod, and then they're just impressed. Why did nobody tell me that my phone could actually be this fast? And I think it's perfectly agreeable that it is a selling point for many people. XDA.
we want to remember too, Nexus devices have had weird processors in the past. It was an early Tegra device in the first Nexus 7, and then they switched to Qualcomm. I think the Nexus 4 was the first Qualcomm since the Nexus 1, I think. And there was a lot of questions as to the AOSP support, and when Google supports a Nexus device, AOSP full support is usually right behind it. So if they did go with the Kirin, I think that AOSP support would be right behind it. So I don't know if that's too much of a consideration as far as choosing the processor for these phones.
Yeah, interesting. We didn't see any talk of an Intel or a MediaTek processor either, which could have been viable alternative, especially since a lot of people are talking about the Asus Zenfone 2 has great performance for the most part, and that's running an Intel Atom processor. So
yeah,
I agree. The lack of Intel is disappointing.
Yeah. Now that we're moving on to processors, Snapdragon 820, that's coming up. We have so many reveals this week, so much new information. It really does seem like it's redeeming many of the aspects that the Snapdragon 810 failed in. Obviously, if they have quick charging 3.0, they must have something up their sleeve in terms of efficiency and heat management, obviously. But other than that, we don't know much about the performance. We just know about kind of like the tangent of the features. They do like doing that. They do like announcing all these different technologies that come with the chipset before we actually get to see how it performs. They did that with the 810. We didn't really know quite how it would perform until the LG G Flex 2. So what are your thoughts on the 820? Do you guys think that it can finally redeem Qualcomm? I mean, all the eyes are on them, all expectations.
On a really brief side note, a company contacted me earlier today about reviewing what they have announced as the first Quick Charge 3.0 charger. So that's on its way now. I got the DHL tracking number earlier on, but I have nothing to charge with it, obviously.
I was gonna say I actually have the press release from Qualcomm about Quick Charge 3.0 pulled up here. And just a little bit of specifics. It mentions it can charge a phone from 0 to 80 in about 35 minutes. Fast charging up to 27% more, and reduces power dissipation by about the same amount, up to 45% compared to Quick Charge 2.0, and charges twice as fast as Quick Charge 1.0. So I think it's about, I don't know, I think it was like close to the 25% for compared to 2.0. But it's a big step, and it says that the processors that will include it are the 820, the 620, the 618, the 617, and the 430, all processors for next year. So
yeah, and those are definitely some nice numbers, and I like to see that they're still pushing for that. We'd like to see our phones have longer battery life, and that's something that still seems to be around the horizon, but it hasn't come yet. Battery technology having trouble really competing with that, but they are making improvements, and they're making improvements in how quickly you can charge your device. And if I'm going to go out tonight and I've got 15 minutes to charge my device, I can plug it in and I can get 30-40% on that. I mean, that's pretty huge, and that does a good job of being a crutch to the battery life that we currently experience.
Yeah, I mean, I have a power bank that has Quick Charge 2.0, and 10 minutes in my pocket with my device, it'll heat up quite nicely, but 10 minutes you can get about 20%.
Yep. Yeah, I'm holding one up right now. It's an Aukey. It has Quick Charge 2.0, and it charges insanely fast.
Yeah, that's them who are sending me the Quick Charge 3.0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think the impressive thing about Quick... Oh, so you go, sorry.
Sorry?
No, I had made it a habit of, when I had my Galaxy S6, just throwing it on the charger for 5 or 10 minutes before I left work, and it would give me a 15-20% battery. So, I think Quick Charge 3.0 would be a nice addition.
I'll give you guys a tip. I actually got a Quick Charge car charger. They make those, and so when you're in the car driving to work, you can plug your phone in and get that similar boost from that as well.
Actually, I guess it's kind of like jumping, but it's still about the 820, about what Daniel mentioned about how like the S6 is throwing out a charger. I think this is also important to realize that Qualcomm lost their biggest partner, arguably, in Samsung because of the problems with the 810. So, I mean, that's hopefully an incentive for Qualcomm to like, stick their boots in and be like, we're going to try even harder to make sure the 820 is truly a processor and get Samsung back on board.
I think
So,
one of the things that's most impressive about the 820 for me, is the performance numbers and the power decrease that they're looking at. It looks like they've hopefully been able to improve the issues that they had with the 810 with it overheating and working too hard. It ships with the new Adreno 530 GPU, which it looks like it's putting out some insane benchmarks as per what Ars Technica had on their site. Especially for video processing. And then the new ISP that they're putting in there as well that's supposed to be improving picture quality. So, aside from the quick charge factor, I think the 820, if it can live up to what they're showing it, it can. Do you guys think that it can redeem itself from the problems that the 810 had?
I think so, and it's also, I was going to say, because they actually did some like benchmarks on the 620 when it was rumored to be in the new Nexus 5. And it was, in some cases, or I think it was single core, it was outperforming both the 810 and the Exynos 7420. So if the mid-range version of the chip can do that on single core and then get pretty close up in multi-core, the 820 just seems like, just in numbers case, seems like it's going to be pretty insane.
Yeah, definitely. But you have to look at the context in general. They do have to redeem themselves, and like you said, they need to win back Samsung. And in order to win back Samsung, they need to beat their Exynos. Now, the Exynos 7420 is an absolute beast in terms of processing power. It's just such a shame that Samsung ruined that with the software, and it goes beyond just the memory management, really. But you also got Intel. Intel's latest the Atom processor in this phone. It was such a pleasure to use and quite a surprise. I really did not expect this $300 phone to perform so well and so efficiently. Battery problems aside, which in partially they were software. So the game has changed. Everyone is obviously making the best processors they can and exploiting this void that Qualcomm left in this space right now. This disappointment greatly affected Qualcomm in terms of sales, but also in terms of reputation, and it allowed other manufacturers to finally break into that monopoly, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not going to make a bigger mistake as they did with the 810. I mean, that would be suicide for them.
Yeah, and a little competition never hurt anybody either. For a couple of years there, Qualcomm pretty much had a monopoly on the market. And, like you said, seeing game changers like Intel finally have the ability to move into the market, seeing, the Exynos processor be, worldwide instead of just held off to Europe and such. I think that's really going to push the entire market forward instead of just kind of sitting stagnant as it a little bit was for a time.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a very small market. You have MediaTek and Huawei's Kirin in there, and I guess you can mention Apple's processors, but those are only in iPhones, so it's not really a part of the market at all, really. So, but there's room for growth, I think. And I think that the market won't regress even if Qualcomm makes a beast out of the 820. I still think it'll basically wake up Intel and MediaTek and others and be like, you know what, we need to step it up. Qualcomm did step it up in 2016, and we have to step it up as well. So I don't think the market's going to regress back to that state if Qualcomm does make a beast of the 820.
Yeah, the Exynos line is rumored to get quite some upgrades as well. You got all these rumors about the Mongoose cores, the new architecture for CPU cores from Samsung. There are also rumors that they're working on their own GPU. I'd like to see that and have them dump the Mali. But other than that, their processes are shrinking all over the board. More manufacturers are adopting more cores because you got a problem, just throw more cores at it.
It's the spec war.
Yeah, other than that, performance seems to be increasing still, but do we need all that? I don't think so. Like you guys said, like the Nexus 5, Snapdragon 808, 1080p screen, 2 GB of RAM, it'll be fine. The 808 is faster than the Snapdragon 800, which still powers up the Nexus 5 like a champ. And the battery is bigger too, and the screen is the same resolution, and the processor is more efficient, and supposedly the OS is going to be more efficient. So we have no reason to expect the Nexus 5, the new Nexus 5, to perform worse than the old one, which still performs very, very amazingly well for its time. And the Snapdragon 800 was such a leap forward, and there's still Snapdragon 801 devices coming today, and they still perform really well, especially on stock Android.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely something to keep looking at. Obviously, in September 29 is the rumor date for the new event, where we're going to learn more about the Chromecast as well, supposedly, hopefully, because we all love some Chromecast. Just want to get your opinions on that. I know that all of you use Chromecast, so.
That was I was hoping for a Chromecast at I/O, and I was very sad when they announced it. So I saw it this morning, and I was just like I got wide-eyed, and I was so excited for a new Chromecast. It looks strange. It was a very blurry picture, but it looked like it looks strange. But if it can bring 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, if it can have 802.11 AC Wi-Fi, and just work better than the current one, because I've had trouble on Wi-Fi with the current one. We get people pretty excited.
What do we know about the new Chromecast? Is there anything?
Oh, we saw a picture of it, but it was really
it was a very blurry picture.
Yeah.
The rumors are there are rumors it will support 802.11 AC Wi-Fi because it should, but we don't know for sure. So
yeah, I think I'm really excited for it to support dual band 5 gigahertz networks, because that's one of the problems that with the old one had, and also AC. And I've had problems with that. I really hope they fix up some of the software bugs, but I don't know about you guys. The most exciting thing for me is the rumor of the second device, the Chromecast Audio. And from what it's sounds like it's supposed to be is that you'll be able to connect to this through the Wi-Fi direct and plug it straight into a speaker system or something like that, and pretty much do what Chromecast did for TV, but do it for audio. And to me, that's exciting, because for work, this could be irreplaceable if I can just carry this thing around, plug it into any speaker, and all of a sudden I've got my audio playing from my device with no messing or anything like that. And Bluetooth range is far too short, in my opinion, for what I need it for. So that's one of my most exciting features I'm waiting for.
It actually makes. I was gonna say it actually makes sense, given the other potential news that Google Cast is going to gain a new partner in Spotify, which has been resisting Chromecast in favor of Spotify Connect for a number of years now. So all the other major players, RDO, Pandora, they all support Chromecast, but Spotify's been very hesitant to adopt it. They haven't adopted it at all. And
does anybody care about Spotify? I mean, we've got Google Play Music and a lot of other sources right now. Is Spotify still popular? Or?
Spotify's still a thing in Australia.
I use Spotify Premium. Yeah, I use Spotify Premium. I listen to it every day. All my music's not all my music, but for the most part, my music's there. So.
Yeah, it's quite popular in the UK as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's more popular than Google Play.
Yeah, regarding the Chromecast Audio and the Chromecast in general, I think as long as they keep the price point roughly the same, I think it'll still be a hit, regardless of if it looks like a whoopee cushion with the audio one. It's I think the uptake of it's still going to be exciting. I mean, they're cheap, they're great. A lot of people just throw them on there and go, "Wow, here's a slideshow," and just hooks into all the Google stuff. They're just happy. It's a very happy kind of device, the feel of it.
I agree with you. It's one of the few Google devices that's pretty much you just plug it in and it works pretty much without problem, as long as, of course, you've got no 5 gigahertz network and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's fairly dependable. It's not like the Nexus player, which is anything but dependable. So it's nice to. It's one of the first Google devices that honestly I can recommend to friends and just say, just pick it up. You just use it. Right. You're going to love it. You're going to find some kind of use for it. And it's really a nice market that Google's kind of carved out for itself with this thing, because you see the Fire Stick just went up to $50, you know. So if they still can hit the $25, $30 range, I think they still got another hit on their hand coming up.
Yeah. I really think Google is actually advertises the Chromecast well. You know, people actually know about it. You know, a lot of people flack on Google for not being able to advertise themselves very well, but Chromecast, they've actually done a pretty good job of advertising. So
yeah, and they're hitting the market perfectly. I mean, I remember when they were announcing it, I was watching the stream and they're talking about all the features with it, and I'm like, I don't know if we need something like this. But when they announced that price point, $35, that instantly changes the calculation.
Exactly. It's almost an impulse buy at that range.
Yeah.
Black Friday. That's when I bought mine.
You know what shouldn't be an impulse buy ever? Smartwatches. And now we have too many of them. Corey just got a Huawei watch, right?
Yep, I just got this one in the mail today, the new Huawei watch. Been playing around with it a little bit. It's actually my first smartwatch, so I'm still learning the Android Wear operating system, but as far as the hardware side, it's just excellent. The build quality is fantastic on it. It fits well on the wrist, and yeah, I'm looking forward to playing around with it a little bit more.
I have to ask, how did your first hour of user experience go?
Well, I guess, first hour was the setup, so they're walking you through the syncing. It took maybe about 20 minutes to get everything set up correctly, get through all the syncing, and then it takes a little bit of time learning the operating system, swiping between different things. I do find it's very consistent, though, once you figure out the different areas of it and where you're supposed to go. If I want to get out of this app, what do I do? Things like that. It does take a good hour or two, but once you get past that, it's a pretty consistent experience.
And you're coming in at a good time in Android Wear, and I think a lot of the new people who are going to be purchasing these, I guess you can call this the second gen Android Wear devices. They're coming in at a good time because I think Android Wear has matured to a point where it is fairly simple to use. It doesn't have as many problems as it did back in day one for all of us who had the the Moto 360 or the LG watches, and it was pretty broken in some aspects. And they've really improved the onboarding experience, like you said, the setup and all that kind of stuff. A lot of that stuff just wasn't as clean, in prior versions. How are you finding it? Is it too heavy, or what's the weight of it?
So I have nothing to compare it to, but it's actually lighter than I was expecting. I did show it to a couple coworkers today at work, and they said the same thing. I did get the metal band on it, and even then, it still doesn't seem to be very heavy. It seems like a standard watch when on the wrist. And that's one other thing I want to touch on is a lot of people are looking at it and calling it too thick. And if you compare it to the Moto 360, it's actually about the same thickness, maybe even a hair thinner. And if you look at the statistics for premium watches out there, the 11 millimeters is kind of right in the middle of an average thickness. So it's not actually outrageously thick for a watch.
Yeah, I really like that they're becoming more available to people. As the new generations come out, the old ones are dropping in price drastically. I mean, how much did you pay for your Moto 360? Mario?
$60, yes. Many Best Buy deals at once. It was $100 off if you bought it with another Android phone, which I did, and I returned the other Android phone. $25 student discount, and there was a global discount as well going on. It was the week of the Apple Watch, so they dropped the price quite a bit, and then they had that deal, and the student coupon was a deal that they had for a while, so it all came together.
I'm going to change the subject because I really want to talk about this. We saw a hands-on video of the Blackberry Venice earlier on today, and I stand by it slides the wrong way.
I disagree with you on that.
No, the first Android device I got was the T-Mobile G1, and I loved it. It was, a couple of minutes on it, typing in landscape, and you got it. It's just like typing on a standard keyboard. Your thumbs do all the work. You don't have to think about it. And I think, portrait, the phone is ridiculously tall. The keyboard's quite narrow. I've got big thumbs.
Okay, let me address some of that. First of all, that phone looks like sex.
Sex in Venice.
Oh dear.
Yeah, exactly. Seconds a minute. Now you say it's pretty tall and the keyboard is narrow. I don't buy that. You were used to the T-Mobile G1. You said that had a 3.2-inch screen. We're talking like a screen that's like this big, and
It's like
the
5.4 inches, I think. Yeah.
The keyboard, yeah, it was such a small screen, and the keyboard slid right under the screen. So this has a significantly bigger screen. I'm pretty sure that if you figure it out, if you do the math, you'll find that it's actually a pretty decently, it's a commensurable keyboard length. Other than that, though, it might seem clunky and whatnot, but we also have to keep in mind that the screen looks very, very thin, very light, much lighter than the sliders were back in the day, which were much thicker. But also, BlackBerry does vertical keyboards. That's what they do. I mean, when the BlackBerry keyboards have always been that way. Screen, keyboard, and the screen on top, and they've done that for so long, and they're brilliant at it. They make amazing keyboards, and that's why this device is getting so much attention. So I would think that it would be silly to deviate from that. And the last point, have you tried typing on landscape on a 5.5-inch phone? It's not fun. And if you have a phone that's that tall just because of a screen, it's not going to be really fun unless it's just not going to be fun to me.
No, I think I quite like typing landscape.
You have big hands. You're like.
All right, I'll try this.
Yeah.
I'll try this. This is do a little shimmy.
Oh, you have tiny hands.
My hands?
Yeah.
It is nice of them to give the option, though. I mean, like, Android's biggest thing always at start was that we're going to create all these kind of wacky devices, and that's why we've had, like the side-talking devices of the days. Well, that's Android again. We've got the weird things, the hardware keyboards. They've gone at the moment, but now they're sort of back again. Maybe with this Venice. Let's see if it gets popular. People have always complained. Removable battery, all kinds of stuff. Keyboard was another one ages ago. Is it going to come back? Don't know.
I think I was reading, I think it was Android Police, or maybe it was Droid Life. It was one of those. In the comments, someone was like, this phone doesn't say BlackBerry, nothing will. And I feel like that's what a lot of people, especially in the Android community, think. This is BlackBerry's last hurrah for the most part. So we'll have to see if it works. And supposedly it's going to hit all the major carriers in the U.S., so anyone will be able to get it for the most part. The
one thing that I think that it looks like it's doing really well, aside from the hardware, because BlackBerry's hardware has always been really, really stellar with its capacitive touch keyboard and things like that. The software looks like it was just done right. It looks like stock Google Android that you're finding on a Nexus, with just a few little add-ons, here and there that improve the experience. We're not looking at a completely trashed experience.
It's the Motorola approach. Approach.
I forgot about that phone.
Motorola approach.
I think that's going to be a huge selling point of this. It's very straightforward. It's very clean. It looks like it's running 5.1.1 Lollipop. So I think that they might actually have somewhat of a hit on their hands as long as they market it properly and don't price themselves out of the general consumer market that seems to be heading down.
Yeah, it also has something, I think, a bigger selling point. It's moving towards enterprise for a while. You have Android for Work, you have the security editions from Knox, and BlackBerry is also contributing now, and Google Docs and Google Drive have been refined over the years. Now they're actually competitive, and Google itself is trying to push Android into enterprise. And what's a better way to market an enterprise phone than BlackBerry? I mean, it's just a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
I also have high hopes, really quick, for just BlackBerry's approach to designing their apps, like their own stuff on top of stock Android. Because if you look at, for example, in the Play Store right now, you can install BlackBerry Messenger. It's completely material. They've materialized the app. It looks like a native Android app that came right out of Google's headquarters for Lollipop. So
they're ready.
Yeah, it's similar to Microsoft's approach to Android. where Microsoft's been like, you know what, rather than just do our own thing, we're gonna adapt to Android a bit more, make our products, actually appeal to Android more so than Microsoft, because that's who's going to be using them, are people on Android, not people on Microsoft or Windows. So.
Yeah. Well, you just gotta remember to slide it in the right way, and what's up. Like the S Pen. You don't want to go to the S Pen.
I'd love to see how you slide a keyboard in the wrong way. I'm gonna have to wait for the Aura to finally emerge before getting my.
I was gonna say we don't know. I was gonna say we don't know much about specs wise though, really, for the Venice. We kind of just got a glimpse of it. Like there's rumored specs, but we don't know much about it. Correct?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a good device though.
We know virtually nothing about it apart from what it looks like, and
yeah,
that's about it.
Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah. You know what I know for sure, and I don't need any specification sheet to know this. It's much better than Samsung's crappy keyboard for the S5. It's excellent.
That thing was vile.
S6 Plus.
Hey, how much? That's $80. That Samsung keyboard.
Yeah, I'm not sure anyone with an 05 or an S6 Plus is gonna want that. I mean, what was
that thing's horrible.
The interesting thing about that keyboard is that it's hardware now. It's got buttons, but it's like a stopgap thing. Doesn't interface in Bluetooth or any real way with your phone. Besides that, you press a button and it touches the button underneath the screen. So if they change it on the screen keyboard later, it wouldn't work. That makes sense? So,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I would assume you're forced to leave the Samsung keyboard because it's just capacitive. There's no kind of electronics or anything like that in that little keyboard attachment thing. So I'd assume you're forced to keep the stock Samsung keyboard like you already use the S Pen functions on the Note.
Does that make it more insulting then that you're paying for a piece of plastic? There's no real hardware as such in that 80 or 150 bucks you're paying for it?
Yeah.
I think that's about all we have time for. So thanks for tuning in and listening, guys. We've had a great time and hope you have too. If you want to find me or XDA on social media, check out the links below.
Again, I'm Anthony, AMA coordinator on the Android subreddit, and you can find me on Reddit and on Twitter at my handle, AnthonyVArtis.
Well, my name's Brett, or SuperH. You can find me on the Twitter handle, SuperH.
I'm Corey. You can find my apps on Codisms on the Google Play Store, and you can contact me on Twitter at CodismsDev.
I'm Daniel. You can find me on Reddit and Twitter at Ultimax98 and my YouTube channel at Daniel Marchena.
And I'm Mario Serafero, editor-in-chief at xda-developers.com, /Flashaholic Game Recovery. Follow me on Reddit, Twitter, whatever you want to find me. And yeah, that's about it for me. Just one quick note. We also have a big announcement about XD8 at the Big Android Barbecue, so stay tuned for that, October 22. So to learn more about it, just follow us, and we hope to surprise you.